What?
If you're looking for an army that you can form, build a grand strategy with, and execute, then the Orc and Goblin tribes in Warhammer the Old World are not that army. They're disobedient, impetuous, wild, and outrageously good fun to play as well as play against. If you're building an army of the Green Gits, you have a huge range of army types to build from, models to use, and play styles to work with. And in this video, I'll walk you through the basics of how the Grand Army works, what the units do, and where you can find the models alongside any plastic alternatives. And just for clarification, I'm looking at all of the units here in the Ravening Hordes book. And just a proviso, I'm not bothering with what's best. The meta changes constantly, and I'm personally not that fussed about it anyway. Now, before we get into it, who are the Orcs and Goblins? The Orcs and Goblins aren't natives of the Warhammer world. They were in fact stowaways on board an interplanetary ship the old ones used to land and plant roots in the world of legend. After disembarking, the Orcs and Goblins found refuge in the world, hiding and inevitably being forgotten about by the old ones. The Orcs and Goblins since flourished, and are now mostly clustered in either the Badlands, south of the Border Princes, or the Darklands, to the east of the Old World. They serve their twin gods Gork and Mork, hoping to be brutal and cunning enough to join their brother gods in the afterlife. The tribes are semi-nomadic, sometimes grouping both Orc and Goblin, some in groups of just Orcs or just Goblins, but often enlisting other creatures into their ranks, like the Trolls, lumbering creatures who can adapt to their environment, boars, wolves, spiders, and wyverns as mounts, and giants as occasional allies. Now, how do they work in-game? Orcs and Goblins are probably one of the funniest armies to play with across any system. I can only speak from experience of playing against them, but trying to have an overarching strategy is seemingly a road to madness that will leave you having a psychotic breakdown at the edge of the table. You have a lot of units that will just want to work by themselves using the mechanics of the game, as they either have random movement, are impetuous, so have to charge, or are stupid, meaning you often have little control over what any of the units do. So generally you want to build up an army, point it in a rough direction, and kind of just see what happens. For universal rules first, lots of your units have the motley crew rule, meaning they don't need to uniformly carry the same weapon type. Bear this in mind when you're making your models, as you will need to WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, the models if you're using different loadouts. Just as a rule of thumb, make sure the model is carrying what you say it's carrying. Otherwise, things get confusing real quick. Warband gives your units additional leadership per rank in a unit, which is great, as boys don't necessarily have the highest leadership value. Horde gives them +1 rank bonus, and most standard units are impetuous, meaning that if a unit is eligible to charge a unit, it's got to roll a dice and on a 1 to a 3 must attempt to charge. Some units like Trolls are stupid, meaning they need to pass a leadership test to move normally. Otherwise, they must move straight forward. For the Orc and Goblin specific rules, Big Uns gain +1 strength and armor bane 1 in combat. Units carrying choppers can reroll wound rolls of 1 and have an AP of 1 in a turn in which the wielder charged. Warpaint gives those painted with it a 6+ ward save, but they can't wear any armor, although they may carry a shield. Black Orcs have a couple of special rules. Da Boys affects Black Orc units. Essentially, every unit of Black Orc mobs means your army must include at least one Black Orc boss or big boss, and vice versa. And Black Orcs also ignore panic, meaning they don't have to take a leadership test if a unit breaks and flees within 6 inches as normal. Being hardy, they also quell impetuosity, so friendly units within 6 inches can ignore impetuousness. Goblins have a few special rules. Elves cause fear in goblins, and orc units have ignore goblin panic. They expect goblins to run away in the midst of a fight, so don't need to make panic checks if they break and flee or fall back through them. Finally, once per game, a unit with the WAAAGH special rule can call a WAAAGH in their command subphase by successfully passing a leadership test. If passed, the character, mount, and any unit it's joined can reroll hit rolls of 1 and gains a +1 combat resolution. The Shaman of the tribes have 2 spell laws to draw from. Orc Shaman can draw from the Law of Gork, which provides 2 spells. First is the Combat Assailment spell, Brainburster, which has a casting spell value of 10 and causes a single enemy model the unit is in combat with to suffer a Strength 6 hit, causing D3 multiple wounds with no armor or regen saves allowed. Gaze of Gork is a magic missile that has a range of 5d6 inches that affects any model, friend or foe. If the model falls under a straight line from the edge of the base, they suffer a Strength 5 hit with an AP of 3. This has a casting value of 9. Goblins, on the other hand, can draw from the Law of Mork, which gives you 2 hexes. Mork's Curse requires a casting roll of 8 and is a remains in play spell that requires the hexed unit to reroll any armor save of a natural 6. Itchy Nuisance causes the hexed unit to suffer a negative D3 modifier to its toughness and initiative until your next start of turn, on a cast of a 9. For magic weapons, the Battle Axe of the Last Big War is a Strength +2 axe that gives D6 extra magical attacks. However, if you roll a natural 6 for the extra attacks, it loses the extra attacks ability at the end of that combat. It also requires 2 hands and gives you Strike Last, as it's a giant axe, so it's really slow to hit with. Porco's Pig Sticker is a magical attack spear with Armorbane 1 that can only be wielded by a cavalry, chariot, or monster. It gains +1 strength and -1 AP on a turn that it charged, and also gains +1 attack for each rank the opposing unit has. Dachopius Chopper is a +1 strength, AP -3 weapon. And Walloper's One Hit Wonder is a magic single-use weapon that for 1 round of combat becomes a strikes first, strength 10, AP -3 attack weapon. Blimey Charlie, that's only 15 points. Jesus. Rattling off the rest, you have 2 bits of magic armor. The Trollhide Trousers gives the wearer +1 armor and regen 5, and the Armor of Mork is a suit of magic resist 2, heavy armor. The talisman, the Glowy Green Amulet, can be used to dispel magic on a 2+, but if a 1 is rolled, the amulet explodes and can no longer be used. The Collar of Zorga gives -1 to hit against any chariot pulling beast or cavalry mount. For magic standards, the Big Red Raggedy Flag gives the unit +1 weapon skill and +1 combat resolution. The War Banner increases the maximum charge range of the unit by 3 inches, and the unit can add D3 inches to its charge roll. The Banner of Butchery gives a unit +1 strength when it charges, and Guff's Windy Banner is a... how to put this? Well, it's a banner that farts.
Sup, Jake?
Meaning that the hilarious nature of the banner causes the unit carrying it to find it so funny that they can re-roll any panic checks. For your 3 enchanted items, the Big Boss Hat is an ornate helmet that is so impressive that it causes any unit the character has joined to become unbreakable for a turn, so long as the character wearing it passes a leadership test at the beginning of a turn that they aren't in combat. The Ed Button Hat gives the wearer impact hits 1 with an AP of 2. And the fungus wine is a single-use brew for night goblin characters, which is concocted of the mushrooms that they have grown in their caves, I guess. Once per game in the command sub-phase, the goblin can attempt to distribute the wine around a unit they've joined by passing a leadership test. And if successful, the unit becomes incredibly high. I mean immune to psychology, because they've just necked a bunch of psilocybin. Finally, for your 3 arcane items, glittering whatnots cause an enemy spell to be returned to them on a d6 of a 4-up, instead of making a normal dispel attempt. The casting wizard can then attempt to dispel their own spell or suffer the effects of it. Buzzgob's knobbly staff allows the bearer to reroll a casting roll once a game, and the Idol of Mork gives the bearer +3 inches to their dispel range, and they can also reroll any dispel attempts. Okay, that's the magic rules and equipment. So, on to your units. It's a standard army composition for the Grand Army. You have a huge variety of units to choose from, which can be broken into 3 overarching categories: Orc units, Goblin units, and then everyone else that make up the rest of the tribes. Which character types you take can affect your army's composition, but your army can comprise of both Orc and Goblin units. It's entirely up to you if you want to take just Orc or just Goblins or a mix of the both. To make this easy though, I'll run through each of the Orc units first, then the Goblins, and then everything else. So, for your Orc characters, you can have up to 1 of either a Black Orc warboss, a regular Orc warboss, or an Orc weird knob per 1,000 points, and then any number of their lesser equivalents up to your points limits. So Black Orcs are the toughest of your gits, and they come wearing full plate armor and can be mounted and carry a number of different weapons. Regular Orc bosses are similar but only carry light armor. Black Orc warbosses have the best stats of all the boss types here, but you are paying a points premium for them. Either variety can call wars, have the furious charge rules, so they're real brutes in combat. Warbosses are impetuous, whereas Black Orcs quell impetuousness and also ignore panic. Both the regular and Black Orc boss types have a number of metal and resin variants available, but if you want to stick to plastic, the Age of Sigmar Orc war clans have a number of plastic kits available, especially for the Black Orcs in the Weirdboys range. Weirdboys and Weird Knobs are your Orc wizards, being at level 1 and 3 wizards respectively, although they can go up to levels 2 and 4. They have access to battle magic, elementalism, and the WAAAGH magic spell laws. The WAAAGH magic spell law is a special Orc spell law inside the main book. They also have access to the aforementioned Law of Gork. An Orc shaman that joins a unit of Orcs with a unit strength of 10 or more can take advantage of mob rule, granting them +1 to their casting roll as they channel all of the magic in the Orc unit. If the unit strength falls below that 10, they lose the modifier. Again, a number of resin and metal Orc shaman exist, but the Orc war clans are your friends here. Both the bosses and shaman can be mounted on war boars. The bosses can also take chariots, but the weird bosses and weird knobs can also ride wyverns, a lesser dragon, but just as tough and strong. Now, they can't breathe fire like normal dragons can, but they do have poisonous attacks. There are a number of different wyvern models available. First is the classic resin orc warboss on wyvern, which could double as a black orc. But for shamans, you're better off proxying. The vulture model from the Orc war tribes works really well. And the megaboss on Maw Crusher can also work, but you will need to check the base size as this is a pretty huge model. For your core choices, you can take any number of impetuous orc mobs, who are by themselves incredibly customizable. They come as a standard unit of a minimum of 5 boys, but have no unit cap. They can take a full command, are equipped with light armor and chopper hand weapons, but you can upgrade the weapons on the squad, which will change what they do. So you could take Warbows for free, turning them into arrow boys. Interestingly, you can have them replace their light armor to gain the frenzy rule, unlocking the ability to take war paint and big stabbers, giant orc hunting spears that give the unit D3 impact hits. The Orc Boys are a classic kit available as a box of 38, split into 2 mobs of 19, one with hand weapons and one with bows. Now, that's the only core orc option, unless you take a black orc warboss or big boss, allowing you to take a single unit of black orcs as a core choice. Now, black orcs are a heavy infantry unit of full plate armors, slightly stronger orcs that can take a full command, become veterans and stubborn, equip either a shield, an extra hand weapon, or take a great weapon, or have a mix of it all, as they have the Motley Crew rule. Now, these boys are tough as nails. They come as a classic box of 20, or you could take a look at Auric Clan's Ard Boys for newer takes, but they do come in smaller squad sizes. That's all there is for the Orc core choices. But for their special, you can take more Black Orcs, as well as Orc Boar Boys and Orc Boar Chariots. The Orc Boar Boys are a heavy cavalry option that are effectively regular orcs on boars. They can be upgraded with cavalry spears and shields, as well as heavy armor. This, alongside the boar's Armored Hide 1, means that they could get upgraded to have a 3+ armor save, which makes them incredibly tough. They can take a full command and, like the boys, replace their armor to take the Frenzy rule alongside Warpaint. This is another classic kit available as a box of 10. And look at those cute pigs! If they don't want to ride the pig, they can jump in a boar chariot to pull them around. Now, this is a heavy chariot that can take an extra crew member, become frenzied, and take Warpaint. They have D6+1 impact hits, which is very spicy. And this comes as a classic kit in a pack of 2. Right, that's all of the orc stuff. Most of the Grand Army is comprised actually of Goblin Units that come in 2 varieties: regular goblins and night goblins. In the lore, the night goblins have taken root in the World's Edge Mountains, often coming to blows with the dwarfs of the mountains. They live primarily underground, feeding off of the mushrooms, rearing squigs, and have an aversion to sunlight, which is why they wear their cloaks. But they have a bit of a thing for the moon. The normal goblins live above ground, some living in the forests of the world, allying with the giant spiders that can be found there. In game terms, this manifests itself as night goblins having a +1 initiative but -1 leadership compared to normal goblins. The night goblins also gain hatred dwarfs, meaning they'll reroll hit rolls against them in combat. The night goblins are a tad bit cheaper points-wise, but they do have a restriction on list building. Each unit of night goblins in your army requires there to be at least 1 night goblin chief or shaman around. That 1 night goblin boss gives you access to the limited units in the rare and special slots too. So the same single character gives you 1 of each option across the army. So it's not a huge limitation, but it's just something to bear in mind when you're putting your list together. Right, I'll run through the night and the regular goblins at the same time. Goblin bosses come in the same variety as orc bosses. So you have your war bosses and big bosses. They're the toughest goblins in your force and can take extra hand weapons, cavalry spears, great weapons, as well as shields and light armor. They can also be mounted, with regular goblins being able to mount giant wolves, wolf chariots, or giant spiders, whereas night goblin bosses can only ride gigantic cave squigs. Giant wolves are movement 9 fast cavalry, so they can pivot 90 degrees even after its charge. Giant wolves move 9 inches and are fast cavalry, so they can pivot 90 degrees even after moving. And as they are chariot runners as well, chariots can draw line of sight through them and move through them. Goblin wolf chariots are impetuous light chariots pulled by up to 3 giant wolves each. As a special unit, they can be in squads of up to 5, meaning if you embedded a goblin boss on a chariot, you could have a big blob of 6 chariots. Gigantic spiders are a light cavalry option that provide an extra wound. They're also fast cavalry and generate poisoned attacks, so they automatically wound on a 6. Giant cave squigs are a monstrous cavalry option, and like all squigs, have 3d6 random movement, meaning they must move in the compulsory moves phase. While this means they can't technically declare a charge, if they do make contact with an enemy unit when they move, they actually count as having charged. They have 3 Armor Bane 1 attacks at AP 1 with their massive gobs that are also Killing Blow, instantly killing any infantry they wound on a roll of a 6. Now before I look at the models, let's also run through the Shaman. Goblins have 2 types of Shaman. So your Odd Gits are your level 1 wizards, and your Odd Knobs, I'm now hungry for a biscuit, your level 3 wizards. Both can be upgraded to level 2 and 4 wizards respectively. Night Goblins know War Magic and the Illusion spell laws, whereas regular Goblin Shaman know the Elementalism and War Magic spell laws. Night Goblin Shaman can't take a mount, but the regular goblins can ride giant Arachnarok spiders, normally a rare option. These are terror-causing behemoths that are crewed by 8 goblins on a howdah, or firing platform. The entire model deals poisoned attacks, including a Venom Surge, a single AP-2 attack that does d6 multiple wounds and strikes first. Now this can totally wreck monsters if you roll well. It can also take a Spider Silk Lobber that throws bops of silk for an extra 35 points. So for the models for your goblin bosses, now there's a huge range of foot-based and mounted regular and night goblin bosses and shaman available for the Orc and Goblin tribes. However, they are mostly either resin or metal and kind of do look a little bit older, which is fine if you're into it. But if you do want plastics, you can find a bunch of alternatives in the Age of Sigmar Gloomspite Gits range, who are generally newer models as well. For example, the Loon Boss is just an excellent sculpt and definitely worth picking up if you're running Night Goblins. Right, let's crack on with the core Goblin units. So regular goblins can have as many goblin mobs as they like, who are close order, impetuous hordes that have a minimum of 10 goblins base that come with hand weapons and shields, but can upgrade to take spears or warbows as well as light armor. They can become skirmishers, which is great if they're taking bows. They take a full command and can take up to 3 nasty skulkers. Now these are basically goblin assassins that are concealed, and in their first combat phase, they reveal themselves, striking with Armor Bane 2 attacks. Goblin mobs are a box of 40 units from the Old World line, and the nasty skulkers I think act as more of an upgrade than needing a specific unit, although there are models available, but it is probably worth kit bashing if you'd like to save some dosh, as they have to remain a part of the units they're in. In cavalry roles, regular goblins can take spider riders and wolf riders. Both come with hand weapons and shields and are fast cavalry and impetuous, and can both take spears, light armor, and full commands. However, the spider riders can upgrade to take short bows alongside their shields, whilst the wolf riders have to replace their shields with short bows, although they can do it for free. I think this is because they can do the fire and flee reaction as a base reaction, and also upgrade to have a number of other archer-based special rules, like feigned flight, meaning they'll automatically rally if they do fire and flee. They also have access to the reserve move rule, allowing them to move after shooting, making them incredibly agile mounted shooting cavalry. The spider riders, on the other hand, have poisoned attacks as base, meaning that all attacks, including any shooting attacks, will automatically be wounding on 6s to hit. Now, Wolf Riders are available as units of 15 from the Old World range, or units of 5 Snarlfang Riders from the Gloomspite Gitz range. The Spider Riders are only available under the Gloomspite Gitz range. Now, Night Goblins have 2 core choices: Night Goblin mobs and Night Goblin squig herds. Now, as mentioned before, you can have one of each per boss or shaman. Night Goblins, like Goblin mobs, can take spears, but can't take any light armor, and drop their shields to take short bows. They can take a command and have 2 iconic upgrades, the first of which are Netters. These are units that entangle enemies in the combat phase on a roll of a 2+, reducing the opponent's strength by 1. Fanatics are the other unit. Now, these things are both hilarious and devastating at the same time. They're the only unit in the old world that use a round base, and each Night Goblin mob can take up to 3 of these things. During any start of turn subphase, including your opponent's, you can release any number of Fanatics from the mob. Now, a Fanatic is placed within 3 inches of the unit, and is then moved 2d6 inches in a direction of the controlling player's choosing. If the Fanatic comes into contact with another unit, or if another unit, friend or foe, voluntarily comes into contact with it, the Fanatic moves through the unit, dealing d6 strength 5 hits with its ball and chain. Ouch! After it's released, it now moves in a random direction during the compulsory moves phase. This can have it go all over the place and makes them incredibly dangerous. Your opponents can't target them for attacks in the shooting phase, as they're just too crazy to pin down. However, they can be hit by template weapons, and if they come into contact with any natural terrain feature, they instantly die. So if they touch a forest or anything like that, they're just dead. As I said, these things are iconic, and you want as many of them in your army as you can fit. Night Goblins come in classic kits of 40 models, although the Gloomspite Gitz have newer Moon Clan Shooter and Stabber squads available. Fanatics are currently only available under the AOS Gloomspite Gitz range. Your other core choice are Night Goblin squig herds. Now, these come as a unit of a minimum of 5 squigs, with 1 herder leading the squigs. Their huge gobs are strength 5 AP-1 attacks with Armor Bane, but the real fun begins if they are forced to break and flee. The unit goes wild, and the squigs break, hitting every unit, friend or foe, within a 2d6 inch radius with d3 strength 5 AP-1 hits, with an additional 1 hit per 5 squigs in the squad. They're basically a little squig bomb. You want to move up to your opponent's line as fast as possible. And this is a unit currently available under the Gloomspite Gitz range. In the special slot, goblins can take the aforementioned Goblin Wolf Chariots, as well as up to 2 Goblin Bolt Throwers per 1,000 points. This is a standard bolt thrower war machine that can take an Orc Bully to accompany it. This is available only as a classic metal kit. The Night Goblins can take a unit of Squig Hopper mobs per boss or shaman. These have 3d6 random movement, like all Squig units. They can be skirmishers or take an open order formation, and cause impact hits 1 if they make contact with any opposing unit. They can only take a boss, so not a full command, and can upgrade their standard hand weapons to cavalry spears, and they can also optionally equip light armor. This is another plastic unit available under the Gloomspite Gitz line. Finally, in the rare choices for the goblins are the Arachnarok Spiders without a character, as well as a Rock Lobber, a Goblin Stone Thrower war machine that can take a bully, again only available as a metal kit. You can also take another iconic Goblin unit in the Doom Diver Catapult. This is another Stone Thrower war machine. where the stone is a goblin with wings. And weirdly, this cute little winged goblin actually makes the gobbos a bit more accurate with their war weapon, as the goblin can flap its wings to move it in a d3-inch direction of the user's choosing when the stone lands. This is another classic metal kit, but there is a fancy new plastic version available. It does look a lot bigger than the metal version though, so your mileage may vary on getting it on an appropriate base if you plan to enter it into a tournament or whatever. It is also quite a bit expensive. Lastly, for the Night Goblin units, gigantic Mangler squigs are a behemoth rare choice, and they do the timber rule, which is just one of the funnest rules around. If a unit causes timber, you have to roll off against your opponent to decide which direction the unit lands. It's just a really fun little mini game that you can play. Now, these giant Mangler squigs are genuinely nuts, and if you're running a Night Goblin list, this is another one of those units that you want as many of as you can get. They have random movement, a random amount of attacks that are AP minus to killing blow attacks. They deal a random amount of impact hits at AP minus 3, and to top it off, the plastic kit from the Gloomspite Gits range is just incredible. Very, very characterful, and I just love it. Right, that's all of the Orcs and Goblins stuff. But there are a few of those extra allies floating around that you can take. Snotlings are tiny little creatures that infest Orc and Goblin camps, and act as a core choice that you can use to really irritate your opponent. Now, each base has 6 wounds and come as a minimum of 2 stands, but no maximum. They're also unbreakable, so sticking them in front of a really tough unit is great, as they will only ever give ground and just be a complete nuisance. They can also come on Snotling pump wagons, in units of up to 6 that deal D3+1 impact hits at Armor Bane 3. Like squigs, these ramshackle light chariots move randomly in 2d6 inches. Both Snotlings and their pump wagons are currently classic metal kits only. Now, trolls are a special choice for the Orc and Goblin tribes. These are great hulking monstrous infantry that come in one of 3 varieties: common, river, and stone trolls. All the trolls have regen 5, but are flammable, so flaming weapons will stop them regenerating, and have armor bane 1 and come with hand weapons and troll vomit, which is and troll vomit, an end of combat attack at strength 3, AP minus 2. Any variety can take additional hand weapons or great weapons. And the main difference between the trolls are that the common trolls have a pip more initiative, river trolls have 1 more wound, and stone trolls have magic resistance 1.
And an extra pip of leadership that I've only just noticed.
Now, the common trolls are only available as a metal model set, but the classic stone and river trolls are no longer available. But you do have fantastic alternatives in the Rockgut Troggoths and the Fellwater Troggoths from the Gloomspite Gits range. Finally in the list, in the rare slot, you can take Giants. Now, these are effectively the same unit as the one in the Beastman video, except they can't take scaly skin or regen 6. As this video is long enough already, go and do me a favor and watch the Beastmen video to go and find out about the Giants. And that is the Orc and Goblin Tribes roster. As you can tell, you have a huge amount to play around with here, and we haven't even touched on the Arcane Journal, which gives you access to a bunch of additional units. This is an army that inspires passion in its players and collectors, and you don't typically tend to come across Orc players who don't also get a little bit in character when the game starts. They're reliably unreliable and never do what you want them to do. But that's all part of the fun of the Orcs and Goblins. Now, if you're thinking about starting an Orc and Goblin Tribes army, I've put together a 1,000 point starter list to get you going. It's a combined Orc and Goblin force built using the Core Battalion box, plus an extra kit of Boar Boyz and a Weirdboy.
I've written step-by-step instructions, and you'll also find starter lists now added to the Wood Elf and Beastmen video comments as well. There's a downloadable JSON file that included you can drop straight into Old World Builder, pre-built and ready to go. You'll find all the links in the top comment on this video. If you're in the UK and want to pick up the kit suggested, you can use my Wayland Games link to get 20% off. I get a small kickback, so it's a great way to support the channel. And if you'd like to support me more regularly, you can back me on Patreon now for just £1 a month. That gets you access to monthly challenges over on my Discord. And a massive thanks to everyone already supporting me. And thank you for watching. Wah!
I was about to.
All right,
Are we done? Are we done with this shenanigans?
Yeah, let's call it.